Good afternoon out there, ladies in football land, and welcome to another edition of All Things Football from a Lady's Perspective. I'm your host, Sonia Anderson, also founder of Carolina Pantherettes. Ladies and gents are welcome to subscribe to this taping, so please go ahead and hit the subscribe button so that you too can be in the know on all things football, even from a lady's perspective. Today is Sunday, January 14th, and we have a lot to get into, so let's get started. First things first, the Falcons, the Atlanta Falcons, have once again failed to get the big jewelry. Now, yesterday I went on here and asked if we thought that Dan Quinn would get some jewelry this year to go along with his jewelry from when he was with our West Coast neighbors. But the Falcons came up short in Philadelphia last night, falling 15-10. One thing about that, this was the Battle of the Birds, and Atlanta went in as the favorites to win and come out with the defeat and advance to the NFC playoffs next week, which would be the divisional playoff. But they came up short with, you guessed it, Julio Jones and another drop pass. They were thinking Sarkisian would be to blame because he's a new offensive coordinator, but not so. Let's look at some stats. Falcons went in favored as the better bird. Eagles felt disrespected the entire week from them saying they were underdog, even though they were the #1 seed and have been for quite some time. Philadelphia's offensive line excelled in the pass rush, and that was a difference maker in this very close game. This game stayed close for pretty much the entire game. The Falcons' offense let them down, as we've seen throughout this season, and the Eagles soared. This final score, again, 15-10. With Sarkisian's first year, Dan Quinn does not blame him. This is his first year. No one blames him. In fact, Julio took full responsibility for that fourth down drop pass, which would have been a game changer, which would have meant that the Falcons could have advanced. Some stats to look at. Matt Ryan had 210 yards and 1 touchdown. Tevin Coleman had 79 yards rushing. Devontae Freeman had 7 yards rushing. And Julio Jones had 101 yards. Now, Devontae has admitted to ESPN News that he has been battling some injuries himself, but he was playing through those. And we all know that Julio has been battling injuries off and on throughout the season. So, Atlanta comes on back home, and the Philadelphia Eagles advance. Now, an important note. Today is the Pittsburgh Steelers versus Jags games. We'll get into that in a minute. But I just wanted to point out that Pennsylvania has 2 teams in the playoff. The Pittsburgh Steelers and the Philadelphia Eagles. So we'll see if they both remain after today. Now let's get into that Pats-Titans matchup. Not really a matchup after all. End score 35-14. Tom Brady, Belichick, do it again. Marcus Mariota had 22 out of 37 passes completed for 254 yards. Tom Brady, 337. Eric Decker complimented Mariota, but with only 85 yards, and Davis had 63. Now, another thing to note, and going back to that Atlanta game real quick, I forgot to tell y'all, Nick Foles completed 28 out of 30 passes. Pretty good considering he's standing in for Wentz. He held his own in the city of brotherly love. 246 yards for him. Jay Ajayi with a drop pass, 2 of them, in fact, that were game changers almost, only had 54 yards. So that Falcons defense really tried to step up to the mic, as they say. Agohola had 20 rushing yards, and Legarius Blunt, 19 yards. Now back to that Pats-Titans matchup I was telling you about. The Titans opened up with that one-hand touchdown catch, but that was it. Now, the catch was pretty impressive, and I think everyone thought, like, hey, Titans might be on to something. They were not tight enough. So sorry, Titans. Patriots advanced. Stats on that game for Brady's side, because we've already talked about Tennessee. Tom Brady, 337 yards. Lewis, 62. White had 1 touchdown, but 11 yards. And Bowden had 1 touchdown. Amendola, 112 yards. Gronkowski, only 81 yards. That's a shock for Gronkowski, but he was back, and that's all that matters. Preview of today's games, which, by the way, are starting right now. Steelers versus Jags in Heinz Stadium. Division matchup, not likely to be compared to their previous matchups because, after all, this is the playoffs. Jags not as experienced with playoff experience as the Steelers are, but Jags have been known to win in Philadelphia. We'll see. Fournette will be versus Bell in rushing yards. Bortles will be competing with Roethlisberger for passing. And Cole will be versus Brown for receivers. Key things to note, Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell have both been experiencing injuries. In fact, Antonio Brown is still complaining of an injured calf. We'll see if he actually plays today or not, as the final list of injuries have not been released. Saints versus Vikings. Y'all already know who I'm going for on this one. Definitely not the NFC South, because they eliminated us. But it's going to be two high-powered offenses going at it in Minnesota, so that's an advantage that Minnesota has, as they are in Vikings territory. But Breeze has been known to be successful on the road and at home. Don't be fooled by their Week 1 matchup. This is the playoffs, people. It'll be Breeze versus Case Keenum in the battle of quarterbacks. Mark Ingram versus Murray, and Thomas versus Torden for the Saints receivers. So we're going to be checking in later on to see how this outcome goes down. Thank you so much for tuning into another edition of All Things Football from a lady's perspective. I'm Sonia Anderson. Please follow my page, The Carolina Pantherettes. Go to our website, thecarolinapantherettes.com, and you can find all the links to follow us on all things social media. Have a great Sunday.